Welcome to This Explainer. Before we dive in, I actually want you to take a breath and just settle in with me for a moment. Today, we're exploring the human texture of the climate crisis. This is something that affects you, me, and literally everyone we know. But we're stepping away from those chaotic, loud disaster headlines. We're stepping out of the high-level political summit rooms. We spend so much time talking about this issue as if it's a tomorrow problem, right? Like it's just something for scientists to model and future generations to inherit. But I want to talk to you today about right now, about our present reality. Because somewhere between the scientific projections and our present moment, this crisis arrived in our ordinary lives. And I want us to explore together what that actually feels like.
Section 1. An Ordinary Tuesday. When the future arrives in the present. So I want you to picture a regular morning, your regular morning. You wake up, you look out the window, you start your day. It's not a day of extreme catastrophe on the news. It's just a Tuesday. But notice how this Tuesday feels subtly different from a Tuesday a decade ago. Maybe the heat arrives just a few weeks earlier in the spring than it used to. Maybe the rainfall, when it finally comes down way harder, heavier than you remember as a kid. Or maybe you're at the grocery store on this completely ordinary Tuesday and you notice the food prices climbing quietly, month after month, and they just never seem to come back down. Or maybe it's just a dry afternoon that somehow feels different in your bones. You feel the shift in your own body before you can even explain it in words. Because for billions of people, it is no longer a tomorrow problem, it is someone's Tuesday. The conversation used to be measured in degrees and decades, debated in this technical language that almost felt designed to keep ordinary people like you and me at a comfortable distance from the urgency of it all. But that distance, it's entirely gone now. Not because the science changed, but because the Tuesday changed. For billions of people, this crisis is not arriving someday in the distant future. It's already here. Not as a bold, dramatic headline, but woven into the very fabric, the quiet texture of everyday life. It's the condition we're all walking through right now.
Moving into Section 2, the weight of the numbers, giving scale to human experience. Okay, so I'm going to share some data with you now, but I want to ask you to do something. Let these numbers land as weight, not just as scale. Don't just let them wash over you as abstract statistics. Numbers are incredibly useful tools, right? They exist to give scale to something so massive the human mind otherwise just can't hold it. But today we really need to feel them as weight. 1.8 billion. Think about that for a second. Between December 2024 and February 2025, approximately 1.8 billion people, that's roughly 1 in 5 humans alive on this planet right now, experience temperatures every single day that were measurably influenced by human-caused climate change. I want to repeat that so we can really sit with it. Not occasionally, not just during some random summer heat wave, every single day. For a fifth of humanity, the baseline temperature of their life has fundamentally shifted. 7 million. Air pollution, which is driven substantially by the burning of fossil fuels, now causes approximately 7 million deaths annually. To put that in perspective, that is 1 in 9 deaths worldwide. 7 million people every year. And they aren't passing away from war. They aren't passing away from famine. They are losing their lives from the very air they're breathing. It's this quiet, invisible toll that happens year in and year out.
And here is the number that honestly stays with me the most. 99%. Right now, 99% of people on Earth currently breathe air that does not meet basic health standards. Literally almost all of us. This completely aligns with the 2025 Lancet Countdown report, which found that climate inaction is not a future risk. It is affecting health now, in every country, including the absolute wealthiest ones. It's a staggering reality to hold in your mind, isn't it? That the simple act of breathing is compromised for nearly every single person sharing this globe with you.
Section 3, the human truth. What the numbers cannot tell you. So we've looked at the massive statistics, and they're important. They map the boundaries of the room we're sitting in, but now I want us to shift our focus entirely away from the data. I want us to be compassionate observers of the spaces where data simply cannot reach. Because no matter how precise a spreadsheet is, it always misses the very essence of human life. There's a profound insight we need to remember. Numbers describe scale. They cannot transmit weight. The weight of a problem, the actual lived human experience of it, lives in small, specific, ordinary moments that no official report or summit meeting is ever going to capture. If you're feeling a heaviness about the world changing, your experience is entirely valid. The truth of this crisis isn't just in the global averages. It's in the intimate, quiet moments of your life and the lives of people exactly like you.
This weight, it lives in the farmer. The person who wakes up before dawn to check the sky exactly the way their father did and their grandfather before that. But they look up and find that the sky just no longer behaves the way 3 generations of careful observation prepared them for. The rains come at the wrong time now, or not at all, or violently, all at once. It lives in the child, the kid who literally can't go outside during the afternoon hours that used to belong entirely to play, all because the heat index has crossed a threshold that a fragile human body was simply not built to tolerate. It lives in the family packing their belongings, moving not because they want to, not because a bright new opportunity called them to a new city, but because the place they've always called home became, slowly and then suddenly, a place they can no longer safely stay. And it lives in something as mundane as the rising cost of vegetables at your local market. An ordinary town, perhaps in a country that contributed only a tiny fraction of global emissions, now absorbing the hard, expensive consequences of decisions made in rooms they were never, ever invited into. The ordinary person tells us the truth that the data can only point toward.
Section 4. The uncomfortable fairness problem, a dimension conversation tends to avoid. We need to talk about a difficult, quiet reality. It's a dimension of the crisis that the data makes completely visible, but polite conversation often steps around. And that is the fact that the people experiencing the absolute sharpest, most painful consequences of this changing world are, in most cases, not the people who created the conditions for it. I want to present this data to you with calm, clear honesty. In South Asia, there are 380 million poor people living in climate hazardous areas. In sub-Saharan Africa, there are 344 million. These 2 regions account for the largest concentration of vulnerable populations, bearing the heaviest burdens today. But historically, it was the earliest industrialized nations, burning fossil fuels across generations to build powerful economies, that created the atmospheric conditions the rest of the world now inherits. The atmosphere doesn't care about borders. Carbon released anywhere joins an atmosphere shared everywhere. But the consequences? Well, they distribute themselves along lines of deep economic disparity. The communities bearing the heaviest burden contributed the least to building it. The sharpness of this burden is just staggering. According to the 2025 Global Multidimensional Poverty Index, 99.1% of people living in acute poverty in South Asia are exposed to one or more climate hazards. 99.1%. And remember, this isn't an accusation. I'm not pointing fingers here. This is simply, objectively, what the numbers describe. Heat, drought, flooding, and disease do not arrive separately for these communities. They arrive together. The people least responsible for the problem have the fewest resources to manage its effects. Any honest conversation about action that ignores this fairness problem just isn't fully honest. Section 5. The powerlessness trap. Why the despair is not irrational. When you look at those numbers and you think about those families, a very specific kind of despair can wash over you. The numbers are so incredibly large. The systems feel so deeply entrenched. If you've ever felt completely powerless when thinking about this, I want to validate that for you right now. You are not crazy for feeling that way. It makes total sense. There is a very real, massive gap between entrenched industrial systems on one side and your individual action on the other. Sometimes trying to fix this by changing your personal habits feels like trying to empty the ocean with a teacup. The decisions shaping the atmosphere are made so far from ordinary life. So when climate writing tries to make you feel guilty for your personal choices, as if buying a different brand of bag will resolve centuries of industrial policy, it misses the point. Your feeling of powerlessness reflects a very real structural reality. But here is where the story shifts. A 2025 Pew Research survey found that 74% of people across 9 middle-income countries say they are already affected by climate change in their area, primarily by droughts and water shortages. 74%. That is a massive majority. These aren't abstract future fears. They're present-tense realities for 3/4 of the people surveyed. The vast majority of people see it, feel it, and desperately want action. So we're caught in this trap called pluralistic ignorance. It happens when a majority secretly wants change, but mistakenly believes they are in the minority. This is the trap we're caught in. That 74%, most of them significantly underestimate how many of their neighbors share their exact same concern, their fear, and their deep desire for something to change. The majority wants action, but the majority believes it's standing all alone. Because we think we're alone, we stay quiet. And because we stay quiet, nothing moves at the speed the situation demands. I want to gently challenge your feeling of isolation today. You are not alone in caring about this. You are in the vast, quiet majority. Section 6. The quiet truth. A coordination problem, not an impossibility. If we aren't alone, and the problem isn't just about what kind of bag we buy, then what are we actually facing? I want to reframe this crisis for you entirely. It is not an impossible physical problem. The technology to address it already exists or is rapidly developing. The will among ordinary people, when honestly measured, is widespread. What we're actually facing is a coordination problem. We simply lack the capacity right now to act together across the national, economic, and political categories that divide us. Awareness is not sufficient, but it is not nothing. I don't want you to slide into a paralysis that serves no one, a kind of informed helplessness. A coordination problem won't be solved by any single individual, but it absolutely cannot be solved without individuals. It cannot be solved without enough ordinary people who genuinely understand what is actually happening. Your genuine, deep understanding of the problem is powerful. It's the necessary starting point. So, how do you move forward? Well, a person who genuinely understands the problem doesn't carry it in the same way as someone who just scrolls past a terrifying headline. First, you carry the knowledge differently. You hold the weight of it, not just the scale. Second, you talk about it differently with your neighbors and your community. You break that pluralistic ignorance. Third, you begin asking different questions. And fourth, you shift the expectations you hold of the institutions, systems, and leaders that represent you. When you make this individual mindset shift, and when that shift is multiplied across a community, a city, a nation, that multiplied difference isn't the final solution itself, but it is the fundamental condition without which no solution is ever possible. Your clarity, your voice, and your shared understanding are exactly how we begin to coordinate. It's how we build hope through collective understanding, rather than carrying the burden through isolated individual consumption.
As we close today, I want to bring you back to where we started, that image of the ordinary Tuesday. For 1.8 billion people, this crisis was already their reality last Tuesday, in the hot air they breathed, the water they searched for, the crops that failed. For many more of us, it is the slow accumulation of things just being slightly harder than they were a decade ago. And for some, in the most insulated parts of the world, it is still a future Tuesday. But that gap between our experiences is exactly what we have to bridge. We cannot solve a shared problem if we can't first agree that it is shared. And we can't agree it's shared if some of us are experiencing an emergency while others treat it as a mere scientific projection. The numbers are trying to close that gap, but the ordinary person's Tuesday is already living inside it. You have the power to see the shared truth, to connect with your community, and to demand coordination. We share this atmosphere, we share this Tuesday. The question is, will we finally agree to face it together? Take that thought with you today, long after this explainer ends. Thank you for